back to A+ Maths. My name's Heidi Postle. Today I'm going to continue on with our functions and graphs, and we're going to learn how to graph circles and semicircles. Now that we've done hyperbolas, let's take a look at a different type of graph, circles. I think circles are probably one of the easiest graphs that you're going to do. So we should be able to get through these pretty easily or pretty quickly. Circles have the equation x squared plus y squared equals r squared. There's nothing attached to the x or the y, and that's what makes us move it left or right. So our centre is 0, 0. And r squared is the radius squared. So r is the radius. If the graph moves left or right, I actually, just like usual, I put the values that it moves left or right, which I'm going to call h and k, inside the brackets. So I get x minus h all squared plus y minus k all squared equals r squared. In this case, my centre would be h comma k and my radius will be r. Let's take a look at some examples, just in case you think it's all complicated, because it's not. Once you start to see what to do, you'll see that these aren't very difficult at all, hopefully. Let's take a look at our first one. X squared plus y squared equals 4. So there's nothing attached to the x and the y, so we know that our centre is 0, 0. Great. And we know that the radius is the square root of 4, which is 2. And now we just have to draw it. You've got your axes, centre at 0, 0, radius of 2. And there's your circle. Let's take a look at another one. X minus 1 all squared plus y plus 2 all squared equals 9. Right, this one has something attached to the x and it has something attached to the y. So what does that mean? It's going to move left or right and up and down. But the easiest way to do it is to just write down the centre. So the centre is going to be 1 comma minus 2. The signs are always the exact opposite of what's in the brackets. If you notice that, good job. And what's the radius? The square root of 9, which is 3. And now I just have to draw it out. You have your axis. Always label your centre first, 1 comma minus 2. And draw your circle with radius 3. Be careful here and make sure that your graph cuts the x-axis and the y-axis, because your radius is 3 and your centre was 1 minus 2. You have to be a little bit careful. If you're not so good at that, maybe just use a compass and use a ruler and do everything accurately, because usually the numbers are pretty small. That's a little bit of a trick. Let's take a look at this one. X minus 1 all squared plus y squared equals 1. So what's the centre? It's whatever's attached to the x and the y, except always the opposite sign, remember? So the centre is 1, 0. And the radius is the square root of 1, which is 1. And now I have to graph the diagram. First we label the centre, 1, 0. And then we draw the circle of radius 1. Now be careful here, because your radius is 1 unit. That means that if your centre is at 1, 0, your radius is 1, so your graph will have to touch the y-axis. And they're going to look for that when they're marking it. So if your graph here cuts the y-axis and not touches it, you'll probably lose a mark. That's pretty much it for circles. Now let's have a look at semicircles. So we know that semicircle is half a circle, yeah? How do we write those as an equation? This time we're going to have y equals the square root of 4 minus x squared. So how do you know that this is related to a circle? Well, can't we square both sides and get y squared equals 4 minus x squared? And then we can take the x squared to the other side and get x squared plus y squared equals 4. So it's a circle. Centre 0, 0, radius 2. But of course it's not a circle, because our original equation was y equals the square root of 4 minus x squared. And because it's a square root like that, we know that it's going to be a semicircle. And because it's a plus square root, it's the top half of the semicircle. So we would have our graph and it will look like this. Centre 0, 0, radius of 2. But it's a semicircle. Let's take a look at another one of those. How about this time? We have y equals minus the square root of 9 minus x squared. Now if you recognise that it's a semicircle straight away, good on you. But let's just check it. Let's square both sides. you get y squared equals 9 minus x squared. Take the x squared to the other side, you get x squared plus y squared equals 9. So what do we have? We know that it's going to have a centre of 0, 0. And we know that the radius is going to be the square root of 9, which is 3. So we're going to draw our graph. So let's have a look. We know it's got a centre of 0, 0. And we know it's got a radius of 3. But it's not the whole circle because it's the minus square root. And the minus tells us that it's the bottom half. That's it. Let's try one that's a little bit trickier. What have we got this time? Here we go. Y equals minus the square root of 1 minus x minus 2 all squared. If you're really cluey, you might see straight away that your centre and radius, your centre is going to be 2, 0 and your radius is 1. If you can't see that straight away, let's see where it comes from. We're going to square both sides. We get y squared equals 1 minus x minus 2 all squared. And then we take the x bit to the other side, x minus 2 all squared, plus y squared equals 1. Now that should look like all the questions that we did before on circles. What's the centre? 2, 0. And the radius is the square root of 1, which is 1. And then we're going to come over here and draw it. Remember the centre is 2, 0. And the radius is 1. But because it's a minus square root, we know that it's the bottom half. How did you go with that? Was that okay? Let's do our last question. Y plus 1 equals the square root of 4 minus x minus 2 all squared. So remember, if you can spot it straight away, the centre is going to be 2 minus 1 and the radius is 2. But let's work it out for people that have a little bit more trouble. We square both sides. Y plus 1 all squared equals 4 minus x minus 2 all squared. We take the x part to the other side and we get x minus 2 all squared plus y plus 1 all squared equals 4. Now we can see that it's in the right form for a circle, centre of 2, negative 1, and a radius of root 4, which is 2. So we can come over here and draw it. Now we know that it's a whole circle, centred 2 minus 1. But of course our question asks for a square root. It asks for the positive square root, so it's only the semicircle. And this one's a little bit tricky. Be careful because you have to make sure that your graph comes to the end points along where the diameter would be. So be careful of that. And that brings us to the end of hyperbolas and circles and semicircles. Hopefully you're starting to see how the graphs all move around and how that they are very similar in the way that they move left, right, up and down. Don't forget that if your graph has an asymptote, your basic curve has an asymptote, then your asymptotes will move around with your graph. I hope you've enjoyed the video. See you soon. Don't forget to like and subscribe and press the notification bell if you want to get a notification every time I put out a new video. Bye.